Welcome to the Bad Tutors podcast. If you're here for the newest, up-to-date, and accurate information on the nerdy topics that are near and dear to your heart, well, let me tell you, you ended up in the wrong place. Here we are all about hot takes and grandiose displays of misinformation, so stick along for the ride and you might just blow a blood vessel or two. So Tyler, today we're getting back on track. We're talking about SCP again, as we should have for my last episode, but we needed the holiday break there and just a little short guy. But we're coming on back. And today I want to talk about not one single SCP like we have previously, or a theory about an SCP as in the last episode. I want to talk very specifically about one of the human elements of the SCP Foundation. Okay. In that I want to talk about one of its most dangerous mobile task forces. So we haven't talked too much about mobile task force in the SCP world as of yet. In the SCP-3000 episode, we did a little MTF Orion 9, also known as the Kingfishers roleplay session there. And later on in that episode, MTF Epsilon 20, the Night Fishermen, were brought up in the context of operating the ATZAC protocol used to make the amnestics that we see throughout the SCP universe. But we never really talked about anything in specific or in detail about any single one of them, or kind of how they operate. And I want to dive a little bit further into that by talking about one specifically. Now, there are fucking hundreds of them. I could spend the next 3 years doing episodes only about different task forces, probably, and how they interact and do different things. But there are, from what I've gathered in my SCP knowledge and research, two of them kind of come up a lot, and one of them is the one we're going to be talking about today. And I do want to talk about one other one coming up here, but not quite yet. So the first thing I want to do is just give a very small brief on a bit deeper on mobile task forces. So as we kind of mentioned in the other episodes, every mobile task force, or as I will be interchangeably saying, MTF, is made up of Foundation veterans or someone that's very skilled in a specific area. From what I've gathered, that's kind of the defining part of an MTF is that they're really, really good at one, maybe two things. So Orion 9 and Epsilon 20 are both specifically trained in aquatic SCPs and aquatic anomalies and operating underwater. And that kind of seems to be a theme of they do underwater, aerial, this kind of mind-altering one. This one erases your memory. There's an MTF that's going to go deal with those kind of anomalies. And based on the word mobile within their name, they are not realistically central to any one location. They are just flown around where needed, as you would kind of expect from something like that. Certain kinds of anomalies don't only appear in one region of the world, they come up where they happen to come up. So the one we're going to be talking about today is MTF Tau-5 Samsara. And how we're going to open this up is we're going to talk about a god.
Okay. Pretty classic stuff with SCP.
It really kind of is, which is fucking wacky, but that's why I like it. So we're going to talk first about the Lord of Endowments. Now, he was a godlike...
he's well endowed.
Oh, he's certainly well endowed. And wait until you hear about his upgrades and augments. He's an endowed boy. And he claims, air quotes here, claims to facilitate human apotheosis, or what would be known as the ascension from godhood, or from humanity to godhood. Now, some can interpret this to be kind of the gift of sentience to humanity, and there's certain record and possibilities that this could genuinely mean that the Lord of Endowments at some point appeared to humanity as Prometheus himself, from mythology, the one that was said to have stolen the metaphorical fire from the gods to give to humans, which like caused them to become the humans that we are today. And there is like kind of some reason saying that he could have come as Prometheus literally, but it has definitely been said that he's taken a physical form a few times throughout kind of history, but not very frequently. There are two final times that he did this, the last two times that are the ones that are like really more worth mentioning. And the second to last time he came back as this literal giant humanoid kind of cyborg with like very high-tech augments and mechanics like interspersed throughout his entire body. And as I said, he truly only seeks in his own way to enlighten humanity and make them a better version of what they are. It's said that he despises all kind of like human institutions, religions, governments, anything that is keeping humanity back from being the apex of what in his mind they could be. So while he certainly formed a religion around himself of very fanatical worshippers, it's not the thing he was personally striving for. He didn't want to be a god, like he didn't want to be worshipped as a god or praised as a god. The fact that he was viewed as one was just kind of a side thing to him trying to help raise humanity to what he wanted them to be. Now, the one thing that he failed to take into account with this is that when you have a form of flesh, it gives way to the failure of the flesh. And whether through just being mortal again, or it's said that possibly there could have been some defectors within his ranks that kind of tried to poison him or kill him in some other way, his body began to fail him. And he then split his being into three separate parts: the mind, the body, and the spirit, in an attempt at self-preservation. And kind of from there, all of these pieces of the god were lost to time, and that just kind of kept on for a while. But finally, he used his power to take one more form over a man who would kind of be corrupted into a similar visage of what he had been in his giant form, a man that has pieces of his body missing and completely have been replaced with different mechanics and things like that, who I have now discovered to be SCP-2970. I have not done the research on him yet, but I know how his story ends, so that's something. So those were the two times that are like really worth mentioning of when he became physical, other than, possibly giving us sentience, but kind of a dick for that when you think about it now, like anxiety exists in taxes, so he's kind of an asshole.
Oh, okay, so we can just blame him for fucking everything. That's perfect. We needed a scapegoat.
We really did need a scapegoat. So, believe it or not, that's not where the story ends. This would be a 10-minute episode and be very boring otherwise. Eventually, a company known as Prometheus Labs stumbled upon both the body and the mind of this dead god. For some reason, in his big brain omnipotence or whatever the fuck he had, when he split his body into three separate parts, he decided to put two of them in the same place in Spain.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't have answers to these kind of things, but he did that, so that's what we're rolling with. It's real dumb. There are a couple parts of this that don't quite check out. And kind of leads us to the point of like, oh yeah, professional writers aren't writing these stories. Like, they can still be good, but they're not completely thought through every time necessarily, because why would you split yourself into three parts and then not really separate it?
Only for
but
the
besides
story.
Pretty much, yeah. The story must go on. So Prometheus Labs, believe it or not, in an SCP world, found the body and mind of a dead god And did they like some unethical science? And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't. Maybe this is a better question for you. I don't know how to rate the ethicality of uh using the body of a dead god for the things that come next. I don't think it's something that's been much pondered. So I'll tell you about what they used it for, and then you can tell me if it's ethical, because it's a body of a god, and I don't know how that works.
Okay.
So when they went through the body, the reason that there are possible ties to Prometheus is that in the body's liver, specifically, there were cells that were found to regenerate at just like an absurd rate, like an almost unending rate. And if you know the story of Prometheus, when he was punished by the gods for giving humanity sentience and intelligence in the form of fire, he was then chained to a mountain to have his liver pecked out by eagles every day, and every night it would grow back, and the cycle would repeat ad nauseum. So it's said that after that punishment and whatever separate chain of religions that we're not going to get into, however he got free, that's why he could be Prometheus, because specifically the liver was like continually regenerating. And from this, they figured, hey, yeah, let's make endless clones from this and just have them do our bidding. Because of course you would.
Okay.
So, like, you know, there's... I don't know exactly how it worked because it's not real. But in my mind, something that is creating what would be good cells every time sounds vaguely like a stem cell. This is going to get into some science knowledge that I don't completely have. But, you know, regenerating cells, if you could take it into our real world of science to that extent, I imagine you could cure many things. I have written down like degenerative brain diseases and like possibly fixing like cancer, like any immune system diseases. I'd imagine you could fix those in theory, but a set of immortal warriors that never die is like way cooler when you think about it, you know?
Yeah, way cooler and way more evil.
It's way more evil. So they went with that one, obviously. And the process didn't go quite to plan. It kind of did, but we'll see how that got messed up here. Prometheus Labs' original idea was to take the second process. The first one was, I have it written somewhere in here, but I don't feel like looking for it. I was asking myself the question because they're like, oh, let's make some clones in like cyborg clones, and I went, why wouldn't you just make a fucking massive army of these instead of taking 4 people? And they did try that, and it went fucking horribly. Who could have guessed? They made a bunch of immortal super military robots, and it didn't go well. Fucking shocker of all shockers. The second plan, after that, was taking 4 individuals and uploading their consciousness to a computer. All of their emotions, memories, etc., anything that makes them, their humanity, was going to be uploaded to a computer. That's a whole different ethical debate that we're not even going to fucking get into. The point of this was so if any of these cloned bodies were destroyed, you could just slap it into a new body to just get that memory back up in there, tell them what killed them, and fucking send them back out. Which I did realize in the process of researching this is just the plot of Avatar 2 as well.
I haven't seen the second one. So spoilers, thank you.
It's in the first 5 minutes and the trailers. That's on you.
Fuck you. How dare you?
But so that was the idea there of when the army of them didn't work, then we keep the humanity of people and go from there and make it a little easier on ourselves. And that was great. It was all set up. It was working for I believe a minute. As in everything SCP, the kind of timeline is a little hard to piece together here and there. So I believe the project was like already running and already set up when this event happened. The there was a whole raid from the followers of the Lord of Endowment that are still around, and they broke into Prometheus Labs and basically destroyed fucking everything. The only thing that was left after this raid was the cloning machines themselves, which I heard described as miraculously, because you're fucking goddamn right. They literally broke everything else. The memory backups killed most of the people and like leveled a bunch of the building. But the clone banks, those were fucking fine. And since they weren't broken, they printed 4 new blank, essentially blank bodies. They didn't have the memory backups from the 4 individuals that had volunteered to upload their consciousness anymore. So it just made the bodies, and they were kind of left there for a while, because after both that attack and another event that isn't like super well defined, Prometheus Labs like fully dissolved as a company, and the SCP Foundation, being the SCP Foundation, acquired some of their scientists to help them do some more research and figure out what the fuck they were up to. Because obviously something like that was always on the Foundation's radar. They didn't just like kind of find out about it randomly when they dissolved. They knew they were there. And these scientists led them back to the facility where they had the abandoned clone banks, and they took them and repurposed them into what we now know as MTF Tau-5. So there's 2 things, because as I've said, it's MTF Tau-5 Samsara. There's its own story called Samsara. I also believe that that was the name that the Prometheus lab was using as like the code name for the project as well. I think that's where the name originally came from, and then the story about them is also called that. But being created from what was essentially a blank template of a body of the flesh of a living god, or of a dead god, not a living god, very opposite. They were kind of also all the same person in a way. Like, they didn't have realistically any personality. They had no emotions, memories, and like obviously all of the things that were lost. But when the SCP Foundation kind of like activated them and like finished what they were doing, they were pretty much just a group of super-powered cyborg ruthless killers that were just incredibly fucking powerful. And like I kind of said up top, not only were they this powerful for having the body of a god as their mortal flesh and the cybernetics to go with it, but it's also because of the kind of tools and powers that the SCP Foundation bestowed upon them. As I said, different mobile task forces are trained for different things, and these guys were trained on a little bit of everything to start because they're so good, but their main thing that they focused on dealt with the uses of psionic and magic properties. So they were outfitted with top-of-the-line psionic abilities, literal magic. I didn't know there was fucking actual magic in SCP, but like of course there is, obviously. So they really were the best of the best, it would seem. The strongest group, mobile task force that the Foundation has to offer. So it was, of course, at this point in my research that I had a very large misconception in my understanding of this story.
Okay.
And I was nearly taking our intro way too seriously on a very grandiose display of misinformation. But I have corrected it since, and I figured out where I went wrong. So I believed that Tau-5 was also the mobile task force that were the protectors of the O5 Council.
Oh, yeah, no, I would have
in my defense, it makes sense. They're the strongest, unkillable group that will always keep coming back. And like it, they need to, not that the O5 Council is weak, because they're fucking not, but like it made sense in my mind. And like when I hear about an MTF just like going through any random piece of SCP lore, I feel like Tau-5 is kind of the one name that keeps coming up a lot of times. Whether or not that's bias of my searches, I don't know, but like I feel like that's the one that I hear a lot. So I just had that associated in my head. It's not. The one that protects the O5 Council, as I'm guessing you may know, is MTF Alpha 1, the Red Right Hand, which I thought was a second nickname. I thought it was Tau-5 Samsara, nickname the Red Right Hand, not Samsara was the nickname. So, in fairness, Alpha 1 is more fitting of a name for the fucking protectors of basically the goddamn Illuminati. So, obviously, that being said, the group I meant to talk about today was the Red Right Hand. But instead of completely changing courses and scrapping a bunch of this, I think that Tau-5 is really cool, so I wanted to talk about them anyways. And I also think it's an interesting representation of how in the SCP Foundation, even the like air quote human side of things is still just so fucked.
It's gods
like
still,
it's so bad. It's still just a dead god, and everything's so fucked in this universe, and it's great. That's why I love it. So I will be covering the Red Right Hand at some point, but we're gonna stick with Tau-5 for now.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, and we'll cover this in your next episode, but my understanding is the Red Right Hand is the task force that the O5 Council, who, remember, they're all of their identities are unknown, and they are sort of like enigmas in the case of do they actually exist and stuff like that, or are they just like a sort of folk tale? I thought that they were the task force that handled the most pressing anomalies that the O5 Council decided that they needed, like the best of the best and the people that they trust the most on. So maybe that's not true. Maybe they are like bodyguards.
That is still correct. They do a bit of both. That's what I was gonna kind of like lead into with my misconception of like, oh, it makes sense. They're the best and they protect and they get sent out. And I'm like, I had a whole thing of like, they're kind of just the attack dogs of the O5 Council. They're not. You are correct. That is the Red Right Hand. But I think it's, for one, I'm sure they're still fucking strapped. Like, still the SCP Foundation. But I think that one is probably a lot more to the effect that Alpha 1 is a lot more loyal and trusted. That would be my kind of guess to it, because I haven't quite looked into them yet, but that makes sense to me of like, yeah, you can have the absolutely like kitted out to shit boys, but like we trust them. You have to in this kind of environment, but you know what I mean of like, these are the guys, the real guys that like we actually fucking trust and they know what's up type of thing. I think that's kind of the differentiation. Also, based on the two stories that I'm about to tell, that might play into it a little bit as well. But that would be my initial guess as to where that kind of confusion came up from. So there are two big, obviously Tau-5, there are mentions of them in many different SCP files. They've been around, they do cool stuff, but there seem to be two specific stories that I've seen that they kind of tie together, but it's the two big ones that define Tau-5 and probably, I think, why they're probably so popular, at least in what I've seen. And the first one is known as Avatara. So I'm going to give kind of a brief rundown of both of these because I'm learning as I go now. Some SCP things are formatted very much as like the kind of like research document type of thing that we've both gone over and seen in the past.
Right.
But a lot of these are also written as just like full stories.
Full narratives,
basically. Yeah, and that's what these two are. So like we could pull out a couple bits and pieces here. I want to find it because there is one quote that I found like genuinely pretty funny in one of them. but these are going to be a little bit briefer of a recap on them. But I think it'll also go to explain why they are not the protectors of the O5 Council. So the first one, Avatara, is where Tau-5 was sent to investigate a farmhouse, which anyone that stepped inside, and as time went on, even people like slightly outside with a growing radius getting bigger and bigger, anyone inside would just begin turning into a tumorous mass of flesh until they basically just completely devolved into a writhing mass of fucking tumors. So, therefore, sending in the immortal cyborgs that can be reborn at any given notice seemed like a good idea to send in there. They don't feel pain, they don't feel emotion, they don't really care if they're tumors. So they were going around, they found remnants of other mobile task forces that had been sent in that were then turned into just cancerous masses as well, terminated those, and then went upstairs to find a much larger one. They were again told, terminate it, attempted to. They saw that their bullets simply ricocheted off of the tumorous mass, and to show kind of the depth of how little depth there is to this group's humanity, one of the members simply looked at another and said, "Give me your pistol." She said yes, handed it to him. He began to shoot her in the neck until she died, and before she could even hit the ground, he cut her head off with the help of the other two members in the team, put a grenade in her mouth, pulled the pin, and slammed it inside of this tumor-filled mass, because he had realized that the only way to harm it was with the flesh itself. So he turned her head into a fucking bomb to kill this creature that was like kind of talking to them and saying that you must give him the flesh. Just, classic ominous cult shit. So that's kind of like, that's who we're dealing with when we're talking about Tau-5. That's the level that we're operating on right now. After that, one of them found a book under the remnants of this corpse, I guess. He pocketed it for himself, and when all of them went back, they all began to read it. And they found that this book was basically, among other things, instructions to summon a god. And it would seem that it was the god that composed their very own flesh, and like he might be wanting to get some of it back. And this is where things, I think I've figured it out, pieced it together a little more, but it's still a little confusing of, I don't know if I'm not operating the wiki correctly or like it's ordered weirdly, because if you've been through the SCP wiki, when you're looking through something, there's at the bottom, there's a link to be like the next article. Now this can sometimes be just if you're looking at SCP-682, the next one is going to be SCP-683. But some of them will like follow the narrative that you're on already. So this one went from that story that I just told to basically a proposal of how the different body parts that of the Lord of Endowment that they found could be used in like the amounts of money that will need to be invested into the infrastructure to do all of these things. Mentioned in there is the whole thing about the liver and how it regenerates and how that could be used. So like the second page, while certainly related, obviously, also doesn't, it's not chronological, clearly. Like it can't be, because it's they can't discover it. Like if it is in that order, it would create a grandfather paradox. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The team finds the book to go investigate the thing that makes them, so they can then go find the book, and it would just go on forever. So I think that's the backseat, and I believe, I'm not certain, based on how my further reading, I believe the order of reading these would be that, I mean, technically that like one little document, but in terms of the narrative on its own, would be Avatara and then Samsara. So Samsara is a follow-up story that involves both, or involves all of the Lord of Endowment, Tau-5, and, as I stated, SCP-2970, who is, I believe, kind of the embodiment of the Lord of Endowment spirit. I think that is kind of how when I said he appeared again, I think that third split of his body that was separated, he created what is known as the Warrior, SCP-2970, that was sent out to be kind of a herald for the Lord of Endowment and the ideals that he wanted to spread throughout the world of improving humanity and making them ascend, creating that apotheosis for them.
Okay, so this is the guy that he made basically in his visage, the person that he corrupted to sort of take over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this one, Tau-5 is sent to investigate a facility, and the story is bouncing back and forth between two perspectives, but they're kind of the same thing as well. So we're bouncing back and forth between Tau-5 going through and clearing all of these cultists of the Lord of Endowment, as well as a different perspective of the Warrior going through this facility for the first time. The first time it had been visited in years. And we come to find out that what is this facility is, of course, where the body and mind of the Lord of Endowment were found. This is the Prometheus Labs after Tau-5 has been running for some amount of time. The SCP Foundation never, took over this facility. They just extracted what they had and left it to rot, basically. So the Warrior is going through for the first time and essentially ends up establishing this cult to some extent that then Tau-5 runs through and fucking just demolishes all of them, of course. And they get to the end and they're greeted with both the Warrior and a computer. And this computer, the readouts on it, at least seem to be the mind of the Lord of Endowment. And they go back and forth for a bit. We learn that the Warrior is in fact not on board with anything the Lord of Endowment has to do, or anything that the Lord of Endowment is into. He views him as basically what his vision of perfection for humanity is an enslavement of humanity, kind of it's just his vision for things, and the Warrior is the one that has the true idea of what would be good and what would be good for humanity, I should say. And the dilemma of Samsara then becomes, what are we doing? Because both sides are presenting arguments for what it comes down to really is the three of us, or technically the six of us, because 4 members of Samsara and then the 2 of them, the mind and the Warrior. The 6 of us are one entity. And the question is then, who does Tau-5 side with? The impetus, the question is put on them, which I think is kind of the metaphor, or I suppose the not metaphorical, the rather literal sense of giving humans sentience and a choice in this world, even though where they came from is steeped in all of this bullshit. The choice is still on humanity, very specifically, because the mind is clearly a god, and the Warrior is not technically a god, but kind of being instilled with the powers and being made in the visage of a god is a lot closer than just, hey, I've been cloned from the flesh of a dead god, So I like that it kind of focuses on a human choice of it. And one of the reasons that I think that I I was wrong clearly, but that Tau-5 might not be a great pick for the one to defend the O5 Council is because the ending of this story is not certain. I believe realistically within the SCP world, if we were to take it in a very in-universe context, I believe this would create a three-way time split or a three-way like timeline break because you're given three options at the end of Samsara. The warrior and the god. This is a quote from the last two lines of it. The warrior and the god spoke in unison. Will you join me? So there are now three options given to you. The path of a god, hyperlinked apotheosis. The path of a warrior, ascendancy. Or is there another way as an alternative? So you, as the reader, get to pick what you believe Tau-5 should do. Obviously, I just read all three of these because, that's
Sure,
my job.
yeah.
But from what I've told you, and I realize I have not outlined either of their arguments incredibly well. But what would you pick as in their thing? I'll tell you all three, obviously, but I'm curious which one you would go for.
Okay, so the god, which is the mind linked to the computer, to join with them would be to essentially welcome in like a reality where you live on indefinitely in a machine. Yes?
No, not necessarily. I believe that he talks of like escaping his cage and having ascendancy. I think it would be kind of more akin to the six of them, as well as I think the rest of humanity, realistically, completely like. I feel like in my mind, I'm picturing it as like biblical ascension.
Okay.
Like but like instead of just going to heaven, you're like actually becoming gods, essentially.
Okay, and then the warrior.
Where's his quote on this? The warrior the whole time is very against the mind.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the warrior thinks that the true apotheosis that humanity can reach has sort of already been reached with their free will and their freedom to act outside of the endowed one's sort of will and view of what perfection is.
Yes, yeah. His whole thing is humanity should be open and a choice, and what you do is up to you, not what this thing has planned, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. And then I would imagine that the other way is taking one of the Tau-5, stuffing a mortar shell up their asshole, and then having them do sort of a cherry bomb onto the ground and blowing everything up.
I can neither confirm nor deny this.
Okay. I don't know. Like, the warrior seems to be morally right. He thinks that we ought to have free will and reality ought to be whatever you can make of it. The mind god thing is sort of like a perfectionist, and nobody would be able to know if he actually offers salvation, and it could just be like another form of a flawed reality, and then the other way could be just turning your back on both of them. It's hard to say because something like the warrior, it seems tempting, but also like, how can you really map the morals of such a being into reality. I don't know. It's fun to think about. I would probably, flip and bolt the bird and nuke the whole thing from
Yeah,
orbit.
I I agree, and that you are correct in saying that that is the third option of it. I'm gonna hit you with a very brief synopsis in the ending of all three of the different options.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, so it's like a choose your
so
own adventure within SCP.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
fun.
exactly. It is. I actually really liked it. I thought this like I said, like there are a couple things where I'm like, this doesn't make any fucking sense, but like overall, the story was very fun. I liked reading it. Um, you're right. The uh choosing neither of them ends with one of the members of Tau-5 uh killing the warrior, just blowing his fucking head off. And then they go on to completely destroy the facility. They just level it instead of like breaking the computer on its own or anything like that. But they then afterwards have a conversation about kind of their own humanity and what they're going through, because they're just kind of going, well, this is all we've ever done. There's a strong theme throughout this whole story of them not really having any kind of humanity in them at all, even though they want to. They don't necessarily like that they don't have that. As they're going through and killing all of these people, one of the members of the team has to constantly remind everybody else, normal people do not enjoy this. Normal people do not find joy in mindless killing or even killing for a purpose. So like they're going through and they're like, we've kind of just been slaves our whole lives. Like we're so strong? Why are we the ones that are trusted by the Foundation? Do they just know that they have this like level of control over us, basically? But it ends with them saying, no, we don't. And one of them says, we aren't slaves, we are men. All of us fighting to make this world a better place for all of us. But we are going to do it as equals. We will not be cooped up in cells. We will be able to live and learn and love and create. We don't need to be human. We already are, and no one can take that from us. And it goes on for a second and ends with the fire in their eyes burned forth once more. The spirit of the warrior lived on in them, and a god's work is never done. So they continue to go on and be one of the best MTFs in the Foundation and keep doing their bullshit, and they keep on it. And I think that's the answer. Like if we're playing into the canon of the SCP world, I would personally argue that this is the one that's
right.
real.
That's yeah.
That this is
That's the one that
answer.
facilitates more stories. So
right. So the computer one, it was a little confusing. To be honest, it kind of like pulls in like a bunch of like new characters. It felt like unless there's not impossible that there's a part of this story that I missed. It is not easy to navigate all of the time, and there's a guy that it's following that's like doing some work on a computer and going through and trying to like do some like very vague research that isn't very very defined.
okay.
And it's going through and there's like someone is chasing after him and he's like, I'm hearing military boots and things like that. And right before he dies, we hear, if you would allow me, I'd like to join you again. And he had been referencing the warrior a couple times before this, and we then read, the realm was silent as they heard his plea. For a long time, the space considered what he had said. Could he be trusted? Would he steal again? The realm looked into space-time and all that exceeded it, everything touched by the light, and it made a decision. Welcome home. Eons later, when the earth was just a twinkle in another sky, the eddies of the cloaks of gods formed an uncertain cloudscape. 4 familiar faces emerged, passing for only an instant. As their forms briefly took shape, they saw that they were friends. And Irantu smiled, Anru smiled, Munru smiled, and Naku smiled back. And then they were gone. And I apologize. Those are the 4 names of the 4 members of Tau-5.
Okay.
Yeah, that I forgot to mention that as I read that. So like they agree, and in this story they have agreed to become part of the computer. Naku kind of hands in the book, and the mind kind of gains more power basically by them agreeing to join him. It gains more power, and he just like fucking devastates the warrior and like completely tears him apart with his newfound power. And I feel like that means he does his thing and they like ascend, everyone ascends into godhood, but like that one is the most confusing out of all 3 endings for sure.
Who's the villain in the first Incredibles movie? Syndrome. We should all take a page out of Syndrome. If everyone's super, no one is super. If everyone has god powers,
It's true.
Nobody has god powers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then finally we have the warrior's side of things, and he goes through and promises that he will have them feel Tau-5 feel humanity again. Siding with him is siding for humanity. He plucks the brain or the mind that I think is actually like kind of supposed to be personified as a brain, but I don't like that. So that's why I haven't been saying it that way. But he removed the consciousness from this machine and consumed it himself. So he had, instead of the mind having power over him, he had power over the mind. And his way, we see a quick snap to people going through, or I should say, MTF Tau-5, but now all of the characters have names because they all have their humanity again. They're going through and kind of just going through like some normal daily stuff. And then it sounds kind of like they're going back into that first raid that was being executed, almost like it's kind of flashing back or something. And it's like the warrior feeling this, so we see what their life was like before this happened. And I suppose he consumes them and restores them to what they were. And this is the ending. It's really weird. I want to get your take on this. I'm going to read a little bit more of the actual ending than I did on the other 2.
Okay.
As the warrior breathed, he knew that he was complete. Every function was restored. Every memory was pristine. No surface marred by the dying throes of a jealous being in the back of his head. The mind, as it was, no longer existed. The warrior's mind was godly, and Samsara was his body. All across the world, there were struggles. There were wars. There was men attempting to kill men, to destroy them. Those who walked on the downtrodden, there were those who derived pleasure from the pain of others, those who hindered progress. But every one of them must walk the earth, and when he touched it, the warrior was the earth. And so too was he then. The warrior, God with 10,000 hands and 10,000 feet. 1,000 years ago, a god became flesh. Now, flesh has become God again. And it walks upon the earth, and it is the earth, and it spreads with tendrils of unified flesh, and all become one, and all become the warrior. And the warrior knew his true name. He was the true patron of humanity. Now, to me, that sounds like he consumed everyone and deprived them of free will entirely, which was his whole fucking thing. Am I insane?
Okay,
Am I misreading that?
So this is what I take from it, okay? He kind of pulled like an Uno reverse card. and it seemed like both the mind and the warrior were trying to like game at this. And basically, the warrior's ideal was he was the divine ruler over the planet, and the mind's take was everyone ascends to a divine plane or something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it sounds like the warrior does just sort of make everything good in his mind, in his, all omniscient, knowing state. He
Yeah.
just kind of fixes everything. Um, it talks about those who walk on the downtrodden and stuff. Um, but also, it kind of speaks like he is everything and still allows everything to happen. Similar to
Mm-hmm.
like how like monotheistic theologists will say that the reason why there's evil in a world where there's an all-powerful being and stuff is because he gave up the uh, responsibility to humans when he gave them free will. It almost sounds like that, but it's a little bit more jumbled. It's kind of like
Yeah.
if you had a drawer of shoestrings and then you just reached into the middle and grabbed it. You're gonna have all of the shoestrings, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a jumbled mess of him exacting his will and also allowing other people to have free will. I don't know, dude. It's I'd probably supposed to be that sort of experience when you read it, where it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
what? Because
I mean, I
we are not, we don't have the faculties to sort of experience this omniscience that they're trying
right.
to
This
capture
level
in
of
writing. Yeah.
intelligence. Yeah.
So it's just like it kind of reads as like theological uh it's almost
Fanfic.
like a preaching. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there is an angle to it where seeing that the warrior is part of the Lord of Endowment when we look at how he kind of broke himself up. I think him seeing himself, even though he's seen what he's doing is like this kind of righteous thing of like he's enslaving people, he's doing wrong. It's just two sides of the same coin. Of he's going, his will is wrong. This guy's a fucking idiot, but I'm still part of him, so I just disagree with him on the other side of the fucking issue. You know what I mean? Of like they both have the same mindset of their goals in what how they view their goals and how they want to accomplish their goals. They're just different things, but they have the same like I don't want to say manipulative because I don't think the warrior was necessarily trying to be manipulative, but it's just kind of what he believed so strongly that there can be no other way. And when you choose, if you choose the neither of them side, both of them are fucking shocked. The warrior's only shocked for a second because he gets shot, but both of them are just like fucking confused in a way of like, this wasn't even an option. What do you mean you can choose free will?
Yeah, so it's like it sounds like the whole takeaway from the story is even a universally powerful being is flawed in their ways, and like not to get a little bit sentimental, but it's kind of draws back to like how everybody has their flaws and everybody's just trying their best. And it's kind of like reinforces that sentiment, which
Yeah,
I agree
I
with for
agree.
the most part, but like there's some
Mm-hmm.
bad people out there doing some bad things.
Of
um
course, yeah.
but I can't look at the warrior and not just see uh like that idea of, you know this honestly just sounds like Christianity fanfic. there's the mind, the
It kind of
body, and the
does.
spirit. The Father,
Yeah,
the
what
Son, the Holy Ghost.
as soon as I read that, I was like, I had to kind of like actively fight
Yeah,
drawing
you're like
correlation
shields
because I
up,
didn't
guard.
want to
Yeah,
influence myself.
you're guarded on
Like,
that, but
yeah, like, do I think that that's a good read of it? Like, absolutely, I 100% do. But I just wanted to have blinders on for my first reading of it. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think that um, if both of them are surprised that the Samsara choose neither of them, then it just goes to show that both the warrior and the mind are inherently the wrong option.
Mm-hmm.
Because if both of them were truly looking out for humanity, like the OG Lord of Endowment claimed to,
Mm-hmm.
then they would not offer what they did, which
Yeah.
is eternal divine life with the mind, or quote unquote free will in a perfect image of the warrior's world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah,
I agree. That makes sense.
sort of like esoteric horror going on here of just like
Certainly.
there's so much that we can't even comprehend that is kind of trying to be talked about in these stories, it seems.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know, I feel like we've talked for like the last 7 minutes about absolutely nothing, because
That's philosophy.
that's how the stories ended, was just a bunch of talk about things that are just so beyond any actual possibility. It's impossible to understand.
Yeah, these are not questions that will ever have answers.
Yeah.
That's the point of the question.
You ever set a baseball bat on the ground and try and roll it in a straight line? It just goes in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of how this whole story seems to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's about all I have for these guys. Like I said, I think they're I mean, now that I've read it all, I think it's a fun story.
Yeah, I gotta say,
reading it.
Very much props to the original creator of this for
Mm-hmm.
writing such a mind fucked sort of
Let me see if I
situation,
can find that,
especially with the
actually.
Samsara story. Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
they're like the most powerful, unkillable task force that has control over like fantastical magic, and then they're also cyborgs, and they also have mind powers. Is like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Those are some badass dudes and
Mm-hmm.
ladies. And then the Samsara story is kind of like taking. It's just very much a reflection on humanity, and it's a lot more than you'd expect from like SCP usually.
Yeah.
So good on that, OC.
Here it is. So the first story, because I agreed, good shout out to the author. The first story, Avatara, was by A Random Day, and Samsara was written by A Random Day and Ty Gently.
Oh, collaboration.
Yeah,
That's almost even more impressive.
It really is.
Because whenever we collaborate on
like,
shit, it's
fucked.
terrible.
It's awful.
It's awful. I mean, look at the podcast. Jesus Christ,
God.
what a mess.
What are we doing?
We've been talking for an hour about
philosophy. We're poets.
What the
all right, chill. But yeah, that's I think where we'll do a quick wrap up on this one, unless you got anything else to add on.
No, that's good. That's a good little glimpse.
Yeah, my next SCP episode, we'll be talking about more than likely the Red Right Hand, the next mobile task force that I'd like to dive into a little bit more. I don't know what Tyler's going to work on next, but we did just get the drop for
it's that
Wilds
it's that.
at the Game Awards. Okay.
I want to
I
do
had
an
a
episode on
feeling.
everything that I think would be a realistic expectation of the game. And I want your feedback in there. You know, I want your
I'm
takes.
interested in that for
I'm
sure.
thinking about asking our friends. You know, what do they think the game could be, and then what, just off the wall, if they did this.
What do we want?
Yeah, why would they be
Yeah.
doing this? But like, this is what we want in a Monster Hunter game solely for our purposes. So selfishly, I want the Gunlance to be the highest numbers in the game so bad, so that I can look down on all of you little fucking greatsword users and laugh from my throne of high numbers, okay?
Yeah, it could be high numbers, but yours will hit every 45 seconds, and mine hits every 30 seconds, so my numbers are better.
What? The greatsword is way slower than the Gunlance.
Not when you play it right. I can get my big hit off before you can get your big hit off.
Are you talking about a Wyvern Blast? Because that is not the big hit of a Gunlance.
No, you use Silkvines for it, right?
No.
I don't know how the fuck Gunlance.
Gunlance is a combo weapon, dude.
I hit Y and then I hit X. That's the combo.
You
That's
have
it.
small,
I do that 3
smooth
times in a row.
Listen, you have smooth brain, bonk, and slash. You play hammers and great swords, and occasionally heavy bowgun.
I'd say, and I go burr. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But
we'll get into that the
we're
next
gonna,
episode.
we're gonna leave off there. We both hope you have a great rest of your weekend, day, whatever you happen to be listening to this episode, and we hope you come back for the next one. Until then, I've been Ian.
And I'm always Tyler. And our next episode is about Monster Hunter 6, Monster Hunter Wilds.